How do you launch a product with Amazon PPC? That is exactly what I'm going to be walking you through today. And we're going to get right into it. I'm going to be giving you our step-by-step process. We're going to walk you all the way from start to finish. So what we're going to go through is we're going to go talk about our pre-launch prep strategy. What things can we do beforehand? What things you have to know? When do you have to have in place? Then we'll talk about the actual launch. How do you set that up? What does the campaign structure look like? What do you do in terms of your keywords, starting bids and budgets? We'll answer all of those questions. And then we'll talk about post-launch strategy. What kind of optimization should you be doing? What do you set up in the beginning? And then what do you set up after, say, the first couple weeks or so? But before all of that, why in the world should you listen to me? So, hey, my name is Elizabeth Green. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ad agency called Junglr, and I've been doing this for over 6 years now, and the agency, I think we're going on about 6 years. So we have done a heck ton of product launches, all the way from the OG beginning days of set up an auto campaign, see what works, then switch to manuals, to shifting that into starting with manuals and all through match types, and now really honed in, dialed in, very specific and structured Amazon strategies for PPC launches. Now, the thing that I've seen in the space, and oftentimes one of the struggles that I see a lot of new sellers ask about, is you go through and you watch a ton of different YouTube videos, or you find a strategy here, a strategy there, and you're kind of mishmashing it. There's no step-by-step, start to finish process, or when there is, it's not a strategy that is tailored in any sort of way. So what I'm going to be walking you through today is not just a very structured and systematic approach to launching Amazon advertising PPC campaigns, again, for the goal of like ranking products and driving more sales. So this is one that we use in our agency. It is a tried and true playbook. We've used it across, again, hundreds, thousands of product launches at this point. But I'm also going to give you sort of an analysis or a way that you can take this strategy and structure it and tailor it to your specific account, your specific market, and your product goals. Because that's the place that I found that most Amazon ad launch systems fail, is they don't give you any way to sort of tailor it based on your needs, your goals, and your objectives. And that is what I'm going to be teaching you today. So without further ado, let's get into it, starting with our pre-launch prep. So our pre-launch prep, we're going to be going through what we need beforehand. We're going to be determining our ad budget. So 2 methods to do this. Again, this is before you even start launching, which is, this is not a lot of people talk about this, is how budget actually should play into your Amazon launch strategy. Nobody talks about it. Everybody gives you a cookie cutter approach that ends up wasting tons of money. That's not what I'm teaching you today. So we're going to talk about budgets. Then we're going to talk about a keyword research. We have a 2-step method to this, one that we've been using since inception. It's been game changer. I'm going to teach you that. Then we're going to go through the campaign settings and the structure. And then we're going to talk about timing. When do you actually launch the campaigns? All right, let's get into it. All right, so determine your budgets. This is huge. So many strategies I see, they put the cart before the horse. What they do is they say, okay, you need X amount of keywords, and then you need this exact like laundry list of campaigns that you're going to have set up. And yes, I'm going to give you the step-by-step instructions of how to set up the campaigns, how to group them, how to create that strategies. I'm going to walk you through that playbook. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to give you a laundry list of campaigns and a checklist that you have to check every single one of those things off. Because this is what I've seen time and time again when I talk to sellers, is they'll say like, oh, how is the launch going, right? And they say, oh, okay, so I found this YouTube video. I set up all those campaigns. I went in and checked my budget in my ad account the next day. And all of a sudden I'm spending thousands of dollars and I'm freaking out. And then I'm having to pause half the campaigns, or either that or I just sat and bled money for days and weeks on end. And then when you pause half the campaigns, well, that money was kind of wasted. And then you're left with just this real uncertainty and distrust that you did something wrong. It's not that you did anything wrong. You followed the system. The problem was that that system was not tailored to you. So how do you tailor an ad strategy? How do you tailor a PPC launch to you? It's all by starting with your budgets and your goals. And there's two ways to do this, and this is going to depend on your depth of resources and your comfort levels. The first one that you can do is you can set a maximum budget, meaning I can afford to spend $50 a day. I can afford to spend $100 a day. I'm going to show you how this is actually going to play into your keyword strategy, how you're going to approach that. And then we'll also play into your starting bids and your budget. So everything flows from this, right? So you might say, given my resources, given where I'm at the moment, I can only afford to spend $50 a day. And there's nothing wrong with that, starting that way. Now we're going to get into, how am I going to be limiting myself? How much am I going to be limiting myself? Because not actually how much you're going to limit yourself with those kind of set rigid budgets is really going to be dependent on your category. And I'm actually going to be creating a separate video on sort of a forecasting tool and how you can use that keyword research to build out a forecast for like, how much can I afford? What does my strategy look like here? We'll talk about that, right? So that's the first way to do it. The second way to do it would say, I want this desired order volume. I would like to achieve this, or I just want to see what is potentially possible in my space. And then I'm going to allow that to shape my budget. So with the first one, you probably have a little bit more limited resources and you need to be a little bit more strategic with what you can afford. Going back to how that launch strategy was not structured for budgets and you just had a checklist to go off of. Well, in that case, again, that budget didn't reflect what you could afford to do. So there was a misalignment there, which ended up with a lot of ad waste. So what you do instead of that, if you have, again, a little bit more limited resources, maybe this is your first product launch, maybe you have some funding set aside for advertising, but it's a little bit more strict on what you can afford to do here. Or there are some occasions where you do have resources, but you're like, I would really prefer just to spend X on my launch. That's totally fine. Again, there's really no right or wrong answer here. It's mainly about, what am I comfortable with? So it's based on your resources. What resources do I have available in terms of ad spend? And it's also based on your comfort levels, right? There are some people who are totally fine with spending thousands of dollars out of the gate. We had one client we launched. There was more than one product associated with this launch, but we went from 0 to 50K in ad spend in under 30 days. Not everybody's comfortable with running those kinds of aggressive strategies, and that's fine. So it's best to shape your launch by what your comfort levels are. Now, when we get to bids and we get to keywords and we get to budgets, I'm going to talk a little bit about how this budget thing may shape what is possible in your space, what you can afford. We'll get into all of that, but really what you need to do is just take a hard and fast look at what you are okay with spending. All right. Once we have that, next come keyword research. Now, this should be done beforehand. This is the thing that in most launches is going to take the most amount of time to do. And it is one of the most important things to get right. And the question on this when it comes to keyword research is, how many keywords should I have and what search volume should I go after? Now, the answers to these two questions, believe it or not, are actually shaped by what my budget is. So the thing with Amazon advertising is it is a pay per click model. That means for every one of, the search pages that I appear on, when a shopper clicks on my ad, I am charged for that click, right? So in the case of how many keywords should I have, think about it logically, right? If I am advertising across 200 keywords, think of the potential clicks on those 200 keywords. It's a lot. On average, if I only got one click per keyword, that's 200. What if every single one of my bids was $1? That's immediately out of the gate. One click is going to cost me, on across 200 keywords, that's $200 of ad spend, right? So you can see if I had still $1 cost per click on all of those keywords, but I'm only advertising across the 20 keywords, I have $20 of budget spent on just one click across all of my 20 keywords, right? So the greater your budget, the more keywords you can afford to run on. And we're going to get into our two-step method for keyword research I'll walk you through that as well. I'm actually even going to go through and screen share, and we'll get really extensive into here. But I want you to start to think of what is my budget and how does that shape my ad strategy. The other question I often get is, what kind of search volumes should I go after, right? Like, how high of a search volume? Do I go after like my main keywords in the space, if there's like 100,000 search volume on them, versus do I need over 1,000 search volume? Now, the answer to this question is going to be shaped by two things. One of them, you guessed it, is your budget. I'm going to talk about kind of the logic behind that. But then the second thing is just what is the relevant keywords to my product? How many of them are there? What is the search volume for those, right? What you're going to find when we go through the keyword research stage, like the actual nuts and bolts of it, is the answer to this question, and honestly the first question as well, is really shaped by what is the available, sort of searches that shoppers are using to find products like mine in my space. And so if you have a lot of search volume around those, maybe we can be more picky, and we'll talk about that when it comes to like actually refining your launch list. But of course, the second part of that is it's going to be shaped by your budget, right? Think of that. So we talked about, how many keywords we're advertising on, and a lot more keywords means a lot more clicks. The same thing happens with search volume. So for every single one of those shopper searches, you're appearing on those pages. Every single time a shopper searches something, that is sort of, it triggers the ad auction. And if there's a lot of triggers, so in the case of I have like 50,000 search volume keyword, there's 50,000 searches a month happening on that keyword. If I am running aggressive bids and I show up in all 50,000 of those searches, now I'm not going to get a click for every single one of those, but if I'm showing high in search, I'm going to get a lot of clicks. So the more shoppers searching, the more potential for clicks and the more potential for the ad spend. Now, ideally, the more potential for sales as well. And we're going to talk about that when we get into, sort of pick your battles, right? What is going to be right for me, and also setting up expectations based on your budget. But do keep these two things in mind when it comes to refining your list. How many keywords should I have? What is my budget? What search volume should I go after? What is my budget and what are my options? All right. So now that we know that, let's get into our two-step keyword research method. Now, this is going to be very similar to probably most keyword research methods you've seen, except for there's like a pre-step to our method. Okay. So what most people do is they'll go straight to step 2 here. They'll say, okay, I need to reverse and search 10 of my top ranked competitors. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter that list. I'm going to look at the available keywords where they ranked well, and then I'm probably going to go after those. We do that as well, but what we do is we put a pre-step on it. So this pre-step, the first thing you want to do is identify the highest search volume, most relevant keyword. This is key. Doing this step first is going to show you a couple things. First, it's going to make you pick a heck of a lot better top 10 ranked competitors. Okay, you're gonna go through and you're gonna pick much better competitors to sort of create that refined list off of. But the second thing that it's going to do is help you better understand your market. And to be honest with you, this sort of step is probably not a bad idea to even go through if you are, say, researching a product. So I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like here. All right, we are assuming that this is our product. So we have a 40-ounce tumbler with lid. It's got a straw. The thing you really need to know first before you do any keyword research is you need to understand the dynamics of your product. So I want to really understand my product. So for this case, you can see this one doesn't have a handle. It does come with a lid. It does come with a straw. It comes with these cleaning elements, right? That is slightly different than some others on the market. This is going to be really important to understand when we go through and we do keyword research. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to a keyword research tool. In this case, I'm using Helium-10. We have Helium-10 magnet. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type a keyword into the chat. This is not my final keyword. This is simply finding my top keyword. What we're doing here is we're going to type in something that we know is probably relevant to our product. So I'm going to say I have a 40-ounce tumbler. So this is a 40-ounce tumbler. I'm going to get a bunch of keywords for this. All right. What you're going to do is you're going to type in something that's pretty relevant to your product. You're going to wait for this to populate. You're going to sort by search volume here. and you're simply going to go down the list. So what we're doing is we're trying to find the intersection between where we have a very specific search to our product and we have good search volume. So here we have this, and I'm going to sort by search volume, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down this list. So we can see here Stanley Cup has a ton of search volume, but this is not specifically relevant to my product. And here we also see water bottle. Someone might say, well, this is a lot of search for water bottle, but I'm going to show you exactly why this is not our most relevant keyword and what I actually mean by relevancy. So if we go into this search, popped it open, this is the search for water bottle. What you're going to find is that the products that are appearing on this search are kind of relevant to my product. So they're kind of like my product, and maybe my product can fit here. But you can see how all of these products are not exactly like ours. They're sort of different. You notice a lot of like spout nozzles for these products. The way that Amazon search rank works is it factors in a ton of different things. But one of the biggest things that it factors in is the amount of sales that these products are getting through this one specific keyword. And that's why we can use Amazon advertising to help us rank our products. And more on that in a second. Like, what are we actually trying to do? How does Amazon advertising influence ranking? All of those things. But because we know that sales velocity is highly effectual when it comes to ranking, we can actually use that to our, that understanding to help us shape what keywords we go after and what search pages we go after. Because if I look at a page where there's a ton of differentiation on what people are actually purchasing or what's ranked on the search page, I can be relatively certain that there's a lot of differentiation when it comes to, what shoppers are actually purchasing when they search this keyword. And why it's important to go after things that show exactly our products. Let's go back here to our list of keywords. And here we have an example of Stanley 40-ounce tumbler with handle. So there's a couple problems with this particular keyword. One is that it is a branded search, meaning we're not a Stanley, right? The other thing is, you notice it says with handle. So I'm going to go over here again. This is our product. Does our product have a handle? No. If somebody is typing in search and they say with handle and they are shown a product without a handle, do you think they're going to be likely to purchase that product? We might end up with some purchases, but we don't have the exact product that shopper is looking for. So what makes you think that we're going to get a lot of good conversions and orders for that search? Probably not. So see, that's what we're looking to find out is where exactly does my product fit in the market? What exact keywords are my shoppers, my customers, my market using to find products like mine? And that's what we're looking to, again, we're finding that intersection between what has good search volume, so there's a lot of people searching, and is very relevant to our product. And what we will typically see is that the more refined your search is, the lower the search volume is. So remember where I told you doing this tells you two things. One, again, it's going to sort of highlight for you things that is in your market. So for example, if I was unaware of what a Stanley Cup was, I am aware, but let's pretend we're unaware. I would say, okay, so this is kind of, what is Stanley? And I would pop open that search page. It's like, oh, Stanley is a brand. Okay. And then I would start seeing Stanley. Oh, there's Stanley. Okay, wait, what? No, what is Simple Modern here? Oh, and I would pop that up and say, oh, Simple Modern's a brand. Okay. And I'm starting to kind of understand like, oh, these are what a lot of shoppers are searching. Shoppers are searching a lot of branded terms. Okay, that's interesting. Yeti water bottle. Okay. And I would start to see like, oh, these are potentially the searches that are going to start popping up in my account, but I recognize that these are branded. The other thing that I would see is, okay, tumbler with lid and straw. Okay, let me pop open this search. And I would open it up and I would start to look at this search page. And I might notice, oh, there's a lot of things with handles here. And I might start to notice, okay, so these are a lot of 40-ounce tumblers. But you know what? I'm seeing a good ranked product here that doesn't have a handle. Okay, but there's actually a lot of handles here. Well, this one doesn't have a handle. Okay, and this one doesn't. So maybe my product can fit here as well. Okay, I'm pretty, I'm pretty solid. And I'm going to start to see the search market, the products that are ranked, how exactly, what is sort of the lay of the land here. And again, I told you that this is going to kind of start helping you understand like what your search market is, how it's shaped. Sometimes you'll find that there's specific root words that you thought were applicable to your product. So if I'm doing this process and there is ever anything that I'm not certain of what it means. So for example, I happen to know that these are all brands. I'm seeing if I could, like coffee tumbler. Okay, that's interesting. What exactly is a coffee tumbler? Is that like a specific type of mug? Maybe there's something very specific about these ones. And then I would search it and I would say, oh, it's not really specific at all. Well, maybe it looks like it's a specific lid type. Okay, that's interesting. That's good for me to know. So if my particular lid type is similar or exactly the same to this, I know that this is probably a good search for me. If I don't have this lid type, then I would say, oh, I know if I see coffee tumbler anywhere, that's probably not going to be a particularly relevant search because my product does not have those attributes. And you can start to see the things that will work, the things that won't work, and you can make a much better guess there. So that's our first thing, right? So we're identifying that. Then what you're going to do is once you've identified, kind of what has good search volume, you're going down that list, and that first keyword you hit upon that is specific to your product, that is good search volume, that's your most highest search volume, highest relevancy keyword. From there, we're then taking a look at that specific search page and we're going to pick 10 of our top competitors from that search page. We're going off of our, and so instead of just finding a random search page and, oh, I think these people are competitive to me, we're finding who is ranked highest on our most specific keyword, and then we're building our reverse ASIN search list from there. From there, we're reverse ASIN searching, and then we're going to filter that final list that we've gotten from reverse ASIN searching our top 10 competitors. We're filtering that, and that is what we are building our keyword launch list off of. All right. And then how many keywords we pick, again, is going to be filtered by what is my budget? How many of these keywords can I afford? Again, I highly recommend you go and watch that separate video on how to use that forecast tool. That's going to help you like shape things. And then again, how much search volume are you going to go after is again determined by your budget. So if I kind of have unlimited budgets, I'm going after a ton of different things, then I'm going to be fine with going after maybe my highest search volume keywords. But if I'm sort of not okay with that, if I have a more limited budget, then I'm probably not going to be picking my highest search volume keywords. Again, I would go through that list and sort of see. So we talked about how do we find our list. Now let's go over what the actual structure looks like. Okay. All right. So this is what you're going to be doing for your campaign setting. We're going to be starting with our sponsored product ads. Sponsored product ads have the biggest impact when it comes to keyword ranking. So we're going with sponsored product ads. We're choosing a fixed bidding strategy. We're using only exact match. We're going to talk about adding additional things into your ad account when we get into the post-launch strategy. Don't use any placements yet. I know this is controversial. A lot of people talk about putting like high top of search placements. Don't. We're going to be leveraging our bids more than we will our placements. That's a whole separate talk about like what's the ultimate placement strategy, but you can leave them off now. You're not going to be missing anything. If you really, really want to add placements, I would do like 10, 20, 30% top of search, maybe, and just leave it at that. I wouldn't go crazy aggressive. Now, this is another good question is what products are we putting inside these campaigns? Now, this really is determined by if you have variations on your listing or not. If you're launching a bunch of products at the same time, even if they're basically the same product, if they are going to be on separate listings, you create a whole separate launch strategy for each individual product listing. I don't care if they share keywords. You can advertise on the same keywords with the same products. That's totally fine. You just want to make sure you're creating separate campaigns for them. Now, if this is a variation product, you're going to do this two ways. So one is if you have no data for this product, you've never launched it before, you don't know which one variations are going to perform best, you're going to put all of the variations into that same campaign, and we're doing one campaign, one ad group. We're not adding multiple ad groups. One campaign, one ad group, only products from one listing. If you have the data to know which one of your products is bestseller, I would only advertise the best sellers here. All right, this is another hot topic, is keyword groupings. How many keywords should I put in my campaigns? How many should I group together? Here's how we do it. So there's two ways that you can do it. Is one, you can group them by search volume, or two, you can group by keyword intent or root word. Here's how I would go about this. If you have a very high search volume keyword, like when I say high search volume, I'm probably talking about 20, 30, 50, 100,000 search volume. Crazy high search volume, and that's something you determine you want to go after. I would launch single keyword campaigns for anything with crazy high volumes. For anything else, I would be fine with grouping those keywords. Okay, and there's two ways that you can group these keywords in your campaigns. One is you can kind of sort, kind of bucket them by search volume. So maybe you have a bunch of keywords that have like about 1,000 search volume, a couple thousand search volume, and then you have a bunch of keywords that are like long tail and they have like 50, or 500 search volume, maybe couple hundred search volume, and you're like, these are more my long tail, low volume ones. You can kind of segment them that way. The second way to do this, and I think this is one of the more interesting ways to do it, is group them by keyword or intent. So remember we talked about going through the keyword research, getting really, really specific to your products, and kind of like understanding the nuances of the searches. Say I found a bunch of keywords that had with straw, would be a classic example for that particular product example I showed you. And maybe I'm kind of interested, does my product do well with straw? Is that those kind of the root keywords are the things that work really well? What you can do is you can group these keywords into their own campaign, put something on the keyword name, like, quote, with straw keywords or something like that. And then you can sort of, because when you go in and you analyze the ad account, the easiest way to scan everything is by campaign level. So if you sort of group these keywords into those individual campaigns, you can easily see like, oh, this kind of grouping of search seems to be working really well, and then this one doesn't work as well. Of course, that's going to be driven by the individual keyword performance, but it is kind of a way to segment things in a way that makes sense. All right, and then the other way that I would go about this is for any variation specific keywords. So for a classic example of this would be color, size, pattern, anything that's very specific. So in this case, we had the different colors of Tumblr, right? If I found a bunch of keywords that have like, say, black Tumblr in it, I would make sure to create a specific campaign for those like variation specific keywords, and I would only advertise the relevant variations. And then how many keywords campaign, again, I kind of touched on that in the beginning. If they are very high volume, I would put a single keyword campaign. So even if I'm grouping by, say, keyword intent or root word, and I had a bunch of root words, and I kind of grouped them in, and there was long tail in there and lower search volume and higher search volume, but I had a couple standout keywords with, say, 50,000 search volume or 100,000 search volume or 20,000 or something quite high, I would want to create single keyword campaigns for those and then just kind of group everything else. So the reason why I don't give you like a real hard and fast rule to like just how many keywords campaign per campaign is the same reason I didn't really give you a hard and fast rule as to like how many campaigns am I going to end up with? What is my checklist for campaigns? I realize following a checklist like that is much more black and white. But again, the problem is that if you go super specific black and white checkbox, you don't have the flexibility to adjust based on what is going to make sense for your account. So in this case, what my campaign structure looks like, how many keywords per campaigns, is actually built off of my keyword research, with again is going to be curated by my budget. So you see everything flows from like budgets and goals to keyword research, and then campaign and groupings are filtered around that. Because if I don't have a bunch of like really good buckets of keyword intent routes, well, then I'm just going to sort by search volume, right? And maybe I don't have any like breakout keywords or anything with really high search volume. So then maybe I'm just going to bucket these into specific campaigns. And then, so again, when it comes to how many keywords per campaign, I would do single keywords for anything with high volume. The benefit of single keyword campaigns is that you are able to direct exactly what budget you would like to spend on that keyword, or how much budget you want to restrict that one single keyword to having, which can be very helpful when it comes to spend control. I would not do single keyword campaigns for everything. Again, the issue here is spend control. So if I have 100 different campaigns and all of the lowest budget you can set per campaign is $1. So in theory, even if everything overspent its budget, I'm going to have potentially $100 of budget spread across a bunch of different things, where if I grouped all of those into one campaign, just gave it budget, I would get enough clicks on some of those keywords to start making some optimizations. We're going to go through again, post-launch strategy and all of that. All right. This is another question I get a lot, is what should my starting bids be? So there's two methods to doing this. Pros and cons to each. So I'm going to go through the two methods. What are the pros and cons? And then how, again, can you filter and adjust the strategy based on your goals and your budget? And then we'll talk a little bit about setting expectations when it comes to budgets and bids. And I'm also going to talk about starting campaign budgets as well. All right, so the two methods, pretty simple. Start low and work your way up, starting with lower bids. Maybe suggested bids are probably a good way to benchmark things, but I would take suggested bids with a grain of salt. There's a lot of confusion around the suggested bids that Amazon has. Helium 10 will also pull the suggested bids for you as well. A lot of people are like, oh, these bids seem crazy high, or the bids keep changing every single day. Like yesterday's suggested bids were not today's suggested bids. That's completely normal. So suggested bids, or any starting bid, regardless of how informed you are, how good you are at Amazon advertising, are just that. They are a starting bid. So while you do want to have good practices, I don't want you to overthink this. We're going to be talking through, sort of the post-launch strategy and the optimizations, and that's going to help you understand, like, starting bids are just a start. We're always adjusting from here. Bid adjustments and keyword selections are two of the most important things to get right. We already talked through our keyword research strategy. We'll go through bid adjustments in a second. But so starting low is probably either on the lower end of the suggested bid, or maybe you just kind of like pick an average, like I'm going to start at 50 cents and I'm going to work your way up from there. Benefits of starting low and working your way up is you typically have a little bit less of ad waste right out of the gate, because you're not like overshooting anything and like really spending aggressively on anything. The cons to this is that oftentimes you end up with like no impressions in the beginning, or it can take you a while to start to get those impressions. Again, more on that when we talk about the optimizations post-launch. But I do want you to be aware of, again, it's just setting expectations. Really what you're doing when you're setting your bid is you're telling Amazon, hey, I am willing to pay up to X. X is your starting bid. So I'm willing to pay up to 50 cents. I'm willing to pay up to $1. I'm willing to pay up to $2 for this showing up on this particular keyword. And what Amazon's going to do is they're going to take a look at that bid, and then every time a shopper does a search, it triggers an ad auction. So Amazon says, hey, which products are eligible for this ad auction? They take a look at historical performance. They take a look at relevancy. They take a look at what category you're in, what search queries are applicable for that category. So there are some filters. That's why you'll never see like socks show up ranking high on shoes. Like, it just doesn't happen. Amazon has those fail-safes in place. But providing you're eligible for that auction, then what they're going to do is they're going to say, hey, okay, so these are all the products that are eligible. What have they bid on for this particular keyword? And how competitive your bid is going to determine if you're even eligible to enter that auction at all, or to get any ad spots whatsoever. Maybe you're eligible for that ad auction, but your bid is only competitive enough to show you up on page 5. Nobody typically goes all the way down to page 5 in searches. And so the amount of impressions you're going to get for that bid is going to be 0 or pretty much next to nothing. So what do you do in those cases? Again, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself in terms of optimization, but you're going to increase your bids. And then you're going to see, do I get any impressions? And this workflow typically takes about 12 hours to really know, because the data, unfortunately, inside of ad manager is not real time. So you have to wait for that data feedback to say, okay, have I increased enough? Am I going to get any impressions? And start working your way up. So the con of this is that this can take time. It could take time to get the impressions. It can take time to get the clicks, which means it's going to take you time to get the sales. And if that's something you're fine with because you have a more limited ad budget, then maybe this is the best strategy for you. On the flip side, what you can do is you can start high. Typically, that is the highest end of the suggested bid, or oftentimes even a little bit higher than the suggested bid, depending on, again, how aggressive you want to be right out of the gate. And then what you're going to do, that should get you a lot of clicks. But then part of your optimization is going to go, am I paying too much? Can I afford this? What is the performance? And then you're probably optimizing down. So pros of this, it's kind of the inverse of the first method, which is you can get data feedback really, really quickly. And you can get a lot of clicks, which should lead to more orders more quickly. But downside of this is it takes more ad spend, and potential of wasted ad spend is not necessarily wasted ad spend, but because all ad spend, as long as you're optimizing based off of it, is really just kind of paying for the data. But you do get that data feedback on what works and what doesn't quicker, but oftentimes you can end up just paying a lot more for that quick feedback. So you just keep that in mind. So your best method is going to be based on your available budget. How much do I have? In the case of I have a lot of budget and I want to get that feedback really quickly, I want to have a banging product launch, I want it to launch yesterday and go aggressive, probably want method number 2. And then again, your goal. So I told you that, the first method, while it's maybe slightly more cost effective, at least in the short term, it oftentimes can, just take longer. So if that's not going to be in line with your goals of like, hey, I have a seasonal product and I need to launch it ASAP, well, then maybe option number 2 is the best method for you. And then starting bids. Starting budgets, the exact same thing. What budget should I put on my campaigns? Now there's 2 ways to do this. So you can start low and work your way up, set $20 a day budgets, $10 a day budgets, $15 a day budgets, again, based on what you want. But then those budgets may run out. You might want to get the data feedback. So if you start with higher budgets, you're going to get data much quicker. And then if you're going to starting with really high budgets and maybe you want to optimize your bids instead of using budgets to sort of cap your spend, you can do that as well. I'm a little bit more of a fan of starting budgets higher. Again, providing I've done good keyword research, I've aligned the amount of keywords, what I'm going after with my budgets. I can be a little bit more confident of setting high budgets here. And again, your best method is going to be based on your available budget and your goals. So keep that in mind. But if you want to start with like, say, I don't know, $20, $50 a day and adjust from there, again, budgets, just like bids, you got to pick a start and then you adjust from there based on the data. And then the last one we'll talk about pre-launch is timing. There are some people who say like, hey, you want to get to before you have a couple of reviews to be able to start your campaigns, or should I just wait until I get a couple of reviews? Those scenarios, it's kind of like a chicken and the egg situation where to get reviews I have to get sales, and then those sales, a select small number of them are going to be leading to reviews. So I kind of need to get like sales sooner rather than later. But then if I'm like waiting for reviews to be able to start my ads, I can't really push the sales volume. And so like there's issues there. So I would just start day 1. Now, caveat to this, I do not mean start your ads as soon as the product shows available. You want to wait until your products are fully checked into the warehouse. So what Amazon has started doing is they say if your product's getting checked in, they will say like, oh, the product's available for purchase. But what's going to happen is your ship times are going to show much farther out. So yes, someone can land on the listing and technically purchase the product, but they're going to see on that product listing, wait, I'm not going to get the product for like 2 weeks. Are you serious? No, I'm going to go find something else, right? So your conversion rates are not going to be great after, if you launch your campaigns when your ship times are too far out. So you want to make sure your product is available for purchase, it's checked into the warehouse, it's available for FBA before you actually go through and launch your campaigns. All right, so we got our account set up, we set up our campaigns, we got them all up there. Now let's talk about our post-launch. How do you optimize the bids? When should we add new campaigns or match types? And then we'll also go through some troubleshooting, because there's going to be some of you who launch some things and like maybe I don't get things moving as quickly, or I'm running into some issues. So I'm going to talk about some common things people see. All right, optimizing your bids. On launch, your goal is not profitability. And if you start a product launch with the goal of profitability in mind from day one, you are going to not run a good launch. Your goal in the beginning is to get impressions and also clicks on these keywords. How much you pay for those clicks and how many clicks on average it takes you to convert, which is your conversion rate, is going to determine what your actual keyword performance is going to be in terms of ACoS. In the beginning, your conversion rates are going to be low because you have, again, we're launching with no reviews, and you maybe there's more optimizations you can do to the listing. Maybe you haven't quite got your price point right. You haven't gotten any data feedback from the market whatsoever. So oftentimes conversion rate is, fluctuating. It's not all that great. Those two things are going to determine how high your ACoS is. If we optimize out of the gate for ACoS immediately, now I'm not saying we're not going to be weeding out waste in the account. We're going to be talking about that in point 3. I just want you to know, goal here is impressions. So in the case of, I told you, if we're launching with our bids and we're optimizing it, we're checking the account daily. We're saying what has 0 impressions. We're increasing our bids. Now, how much you increase your bids, I'm a fan of incremental increases. So like 5 to 10 cents. If I've done optimizations over maybe a 24-hour period, maybe a 2 to 3 day, and I keep increasing my bids and I'm still not getting impressions, and maybe I want to like really increase my bids, like 20, sometimes even like 50-cent increases, because I really, really want to get impressions. Things to know here is that if your budget is continuously running out every single day, that could also be causing your keywords to not get impressions. So do be a little bit careful there. It's kind of a push-pull dynamic. If budgets keep running out and then you're like, oh no, that's, the only reason these keywords aren't getting impressions is because they have low bids, and you keep increasing, you're like, wait a minute, now I'm at $3. Like, this is ridiculous. Keep that in mind, that capping budgets will also limit impressions as well, in which case, if you can afford to do so, you may also increase your budgets. Again, that's why I talked about how many keywords we should choose should be based on our budget goals, because if we have to choose a ton of keywords and those keywords are eating up your limited budget, you have a ton of other keywords that you're not even getting any impressions on, and then you end up with this scenario. So what you want to do, I would much prefer to have maximum clicks across 3 to 5 keywords than I would be to get hundreds of keywords but only have budgets for a couple keywords. I would much rather have a very refined strategic launch list that is in line with my budget than trying to get everything in the kitchen sink in there. All right. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to be increasing bids on targets with orders. What are we looking for on launch? We are looking to increase our ranking. How do we increase our ranking? By increasing the orders we are getting through a particular keyword. How do we do that? By bidding on that keyword and having those clicks translate into orders. So if we see any keywords that have orders associated with them, I'm going to increase the bids. Again, how much we're going to increase these is going to be determined by, 1, how many keywords am I generating orders on? So if I only have like 1 keyword I'm generating an order on, I'm going to baby the heck out of that keyword. But if I have hundreds of keywords that I'm generating orders on, then maybe I can just increase the ones that have acceptable ACoS for me. You can also do it that way as well. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to decrease bids on non-converting keywords. Caveat here, with enough clicks. There's a lot of times people will go in and they'll say, oh my goodness, the ad spent on this is, I already spent $2 here and, I need to decrease it. Well, what if those $2 only meant that you got 2 clicks on that keyword? You need to make sure you have enough clicks. What is enough clicks? A lot of people give you a benchmark. 5 clicks and no sales, 10 clicks with no sales, 15 clicks with no sales, 25 clicks with no sales. But I said I wanted to give you a way that you can customize this for your particular account. The number of clicks you should be looking at is, how many clicks on average does it take me to convert to a sale? The calculation for this is you take 1 divided by your conversion rate in a decimal form. So an example here would be 1 divided by 0.10, which would be a 10% conversion rate, and that gives us 10 clicks on average. And I would pad those numbers a little bit. So I would probably in this case go up to 11, 12, 13 clicks potentially. You need that many clicks to determine if I'm not going to make an order on this keyword, if it's not a good keyword for me. Now, do keep in mind that every single keyword is going to have a slightly different conversion rate. That's perfectly normal, but we can go off of averages here. And so in this case, now, as soon as you start to get some data to know what your average conversion rate is for this product, then you have a general benchmark to go off of. But in the beginning, if you have 0 conversions, you kind of need that first conversion to sort of say, what is my average benchmark conversion rate? Now, averages on Amazon, people say, are roughly about 10%. It's much lower in more style specific categories such as clothing, and there in those categories a 5% conversion rate is probably actually really good. Some categories you're getting down to like, I don't know, 2 to 3%. It's pretty low. So it's really, really relative. But what I would say is if you're trying to guess on average what you think you're going to be in terms of conversion rate, be very pessimistic here. Again, you have no reviews. You probably have an under optimized listing. Ideally, you don't, but there's always things you're going to find out about your market. And so assume you're going to need more clicks than you think. Sometimes everything, you hit it right out of the gate, the perfect product, everything works, converts like crazy. We always hope for those launches, but we want to plan for the worst in terms of assuming it's going to take us more clicks than we think. All right. And then here's a lot of things. Does someone, like, given that we talked about the campaign launch, then we're choosing sponsored products and exact match only, do you only ever stick to exact match? No. You also want to launch, you're going to take the same keyword list. You're going to launch them in phrase and broad match using sponsored product ads. I wouldn't put any placement percentages on these ones again. You can use dynamic down only bidding strategy for these other ones. And the other thing you want to do is set lower bids on the phrase match and even lower on the broad match when you launch these keywords, and then put that into your account. Again, you can use the sort of same grouping, how many number of keywords that we use when we talked about that for setting up the original exact match keyword launches. When you would launch these, it's probably about 1 to 2 weeks after you've done your initial launch. And you can also launch a lower, now I'm going to say lower bid automatic campaign. I'm a huge fan of keeping bids low on autos. Make sure you're also perusing and adding for potential negative keywords if you are going to be using phrase and broad and auto campaigns. All right, now very last, let's wrap it up with some troubleshooting. So one thing a lot of people see on campaign launches is, hey, I'm not getting any impressions. What gives? No impressions, increase your bid. That's pretty much the default answer across the board. The reason being is because that's typically the right answer. So if you're not getting impressions, you can increase your bids. If you're still not getting impressions, you're still really, really struggling, you can also check your index. If you're, keep struggling to get impressions, you can also check your indexing to make sure you're in the category. Reverse ASIN search your own ASIN just to see, like, hey, has Amazon associated me with any of these searches? Because I talked about, how the fact that socks are never going to show up high on sneakers or running shoes keywords. The same thing could happen with your product. If you get stuck in the wrong category, you can sort of struggle to get any impressions on relevant keywords. The other thing is sometimes we're not getting any sales. If you have launched your campaigns, you've done your keyword research right, you've shown up, and you're like, I keep checking and I haven't gotten a single order. My question would be, how many clicks have you gotten? So a lot of times people will look at their average account and they'll say, oh, I've gotten like 20 clicks. How come any of those haven't converted into a sale? When you go down to the campaign, you actually look at the keyword level. Maybe you've only gotten 2 clicks or 3 clicks on each individual keyword. That's not enough to make a determination. Remember when I talked about lowering bids on things that have enough clicks to validate if they're working or not? You maybe haven't gotten enough clicks, so give it time. The other, what is your expected conversion rate? Can you benchmark that? Now, if you're still not getting any sales and you're struggling and it's been, 5 days to a week, you can probably go ahead and launch those phrase and broad match campaigns a little bit earlier than we talked about. The reason why you would do that is because phrase and broad match will also trigger sort of a different additional variations of those search terms. And maybe one of those other variations or long tail search will work better. There are some cases where phrase and broad match might work better than exact match. The reason why we use exact match is because we can be very specific on the search pages that we are putting our ad dollars into, and that's much more targeted when it comes to the goal of ranking. but sometimes phrase and broad match can be helpful here. So you might also consider doing that. And then the other thing is some people like, all right, I've been advertising this keyword, but I'm not ranking. So the one thing is if you're just going through and you're checking those search pages, I would suggest using a keyword tracker. Now, Helium 10 has a really good keyword tracker that we use. I would check that. And then the other thing is make sure you have a good conversion rate. So the way that ranking works is, again, Amazon looks at the individual search and they say who has a good sales velocity. What products are shoppers purchasing when they search these keywords? And so what happens is when you show up high in search with advertising and your product gets a click, and then ideally your product gets a sale, Amazon's algorithm goes, oh, okay, so people are searching this product. Even though it's still an ad, they're going through, they're clicking, and they're making a purchase, and that is a positive impact on your sort of ranking or your, excuse me, that's a positive impact on your sales velocity for that keyword. So if you can get enough sales through advertising, then Amazon's algorithm will say, oh, shoppers really, really like this product when they search, this keyword. And so your product will start showing higher and higher in search. And then eventually you'll have high enough organic ranking that people will start clicking on your organic listing and then purchasing. And those cumulative sales between advertising and also eventually when you start to get organic sales will add to the rankings of the product. So if you are not getting good sales volume or you're not getting high enough sales volume, because remember, it's also relative to the rest of your competition on that page. If one of your competitors is completely crushing it in terms of sales through, shoppers who are, again, specifically typing in that search, it may or may not be enough to really push you up in the rankings. And so in those cases, you might not have a strong enough conversion rate to really push out that competition. You might not have a strong enough order volume to really push out, the competitors who are ranked in front of you. But the other thing is, a lot of times it just takes time. It takes time to really show the algorithm that your product is relevant for this keyword, that shoppers really like to purchase you through this keyword. And so in those cases, again, just give it time. The more competitive the keyword, typically speaking, the longer it's going to take you to rank. All right, so what we went through was our pre-launch prep, keyword research, determining your budget, shaping your launch strategy based on what is going to make sense for you, your business, your goals. Launching, we're focused on sponsored products, exact match campaigns. We're grouping them based on, again, our keyword strategy, what we did in our keyword research, which stems out of our budget. We're picking bids that make sense for our goals. We're picking budgets that make sense for our goals. Post-launch, again, your increasing bids goal is impressions here, and to get enough clicks to be able to validate if that keyword is a good one to drive orders from. Do that. Couple weeks in, launch your broad and your phrase campaigns, adding in your autos. And then if you're struggling to get orders or impressions or struggling to rank, go back through, troubleshoot. And yeah, that is our structured Amazon PPC product launch. Hope it's been helpful.